All right, we are live. Welcome to the podcast. I am Brendan. This is Sterling to my left, and we also have currently on voice chat Mr. Josh. And today we have a lot of really good things we are going to talk about. So I think the first thing we are going to jump in at the start is the World Juniors. I think this is probably going to be our shortest topic of the day, but it's still going to be a fairly good one. Josh, you will need to unmute your mic. But yeah, for the World Juniors, obviously, we are a couple of weeks off. We took Christmas off, we took New Year's off, but yeah, so we didn't really get the opportunity to talk a whole lot about the World Juniors beforehand, and I was really hoping we would actually get to talk pretty much about the entire tournament going into this one, but obviously it got canceled due to COVID, which in my opinion was the right thing to do. But yeah, it's unfortunate to see.
Yeah, it wasn't really surprising to see, unfortunately, with those outbreaks happening. Um, yeah, I know we touched on it before we took our 2 weeks off for the holidays there. So we were excited, looking forward to talking about it, especially with some of the good young rookies that were available. But it was the right thing to do, shutting it down. Like, when they had the first day of a couple of players testing positive on one team, it was like, okay, maybe they can postpone one game. But then by day two, it was across like five teams already, and it was burning through. So, but it also makes me wonder, we've got other sporting events coming up here pretty soon too, like the Olympics. Are they going to be able to go ahead with that, or is that something else that's going to get canceled and postponed?
Yeah,
I mean,
or go ahead, Josh.
that's an excellent point in regards to the Olympics, especially with so much. Not to get too into this, but political tension as well. I think the Omicron variant even becomes a little more aggressive. I think we could see potentially a cancellation or a reason to not go in that situation. So that's a good point.
Yeah,
Yeah, because who's hosting it this year? Is it
China.
Beijing?
It's
Yeah.
It's
Beijing.
in China.
And
Yep.
so they're going to want to go ahead with it, of course. But then when they have been instituting their restrictions, they are much harsher than a lot of countries in the world, especially Western countries like America and Canada. Like the restrictions China's putting in place are very harsh. And so some of these athletes are probably wondering going in, like, are we going to get quarantined and locked into a shitty little hotel room for 6 weeks and, be getting shit food? And so there's a lot of concerns there for sure.
Yeah, I know particularly with the NHL, a lot of the players that were looking at the Olympics, they're like, we don't really want to go into this Olympics because it's going to make us like if we get COVID, we have to isolate for 5 total weeks, which I know for these guys, a lot of them they don't really want to sit down and isolate for 5 weeks because especially in a country that they don't live in, they don't know. That's really rough for them. But yeah, it's really unfortunate for the World Juniors because we were going to get to see a lot of really, really good young talent. I was particularly really looking forward to watching Connor Bedard, WHL player who plays for Regina. This kid just looks insane. Like he came into the WHL as an underager as 15. He was basically 2 points per game in the amount of games that he played. I think it was like 15 or 16. And, he went to like an 18 or under 18 event over the summer and he led the tournament in scoring. So this kid is going to be a superstar. And then we just saw exactly what he did in the Austria game where he put up, I think it was like 5 points and 4 goals during the game. The only 16-year-old other than Wayne Gretzky to ever get 4 goals in a single World Juniors game. So he's in pretty good company there.
Yeah, definitely impressive stats for him. When you think about some of the other guys who have followed Wayne Gretzky since then, you got Connor McDavid, Sidney Crosby, guys like that, and they weren't even able to put up those kinds of numbers. So, yeah, we could be looking at the next big phenom to hit the NHL. And so that's another good reason to postpone that tournament. You don't want a young guy like that potentially getting COVID and ending up with something like long COVID and having lung issues, and that essentially ends his professional career.
Yeah.
So looking at the list of players who have played when they were 16 years old, this kid is lined up for generational talent. We're looking at the list of I'm looking at it right now. Wayne Gretzky, Connor Bedard, Sidney Crosby, Eric Lindros, Connor McDavid. So that's some pretty high company to be involved with. And Jason Spetz is another one. And despite his blunders in after his career post Ottawa, I think he picked it up well with the Leafs. So even if he had a career like Jason Spetz, I think that's more than the average NHLer could ask for.
Oh, without a doubt, without a doubt. But yeah,
But
again,
to really emphasize, I think the point on the World Juniors, I think they came into this too too lax with the Omicron variant, particularly like we can look at last winter and say how were they able to have a tournament last winter without this kind of problem, and then we go back to this year, and I think fans should still be allowed to be in the game, but maybe a bubble should have been implemented. It was obvious from the Russian incident and the Czech Republic incident on the Calgary plains that there was some sort of relaxed rules and mandates going on with the World Juniors this year that they clearly didn't take seriously, or as serious as last year, I should say.
well, even going back to last year, there was games where teams, like I know particularly Germany, when they faced Team Canada, they had only like 10 to 12 players actually on the bench. And so you're looking at it like last year going like, okay, last year was such a mess. They should have been able to learn from that and implement it better, and it just wasn't the case.
Well, I think part of the problem too was this year the Alberta government, because the World Juniors were being held in Red Deer, Edmonton, I believe.
Yep.
The restrictions were a lot more relaxed this Christmas as opposed to last Christmas.
Sure.
Everything was much more under lockdown last year, and so it was a full bubble. The only way these players were catching anything were from other players, whereas this year everything was really relaxed. They were letting the stadiums fill up. They were letting fans in, and there was a lot of people not wearing masks as well. So I'm not surprised at all that there ended up being an outbreak.
Yeah, yeah. It's really unfortunate because I think all of us, we're not necessarily all maybe the biggest hockey fans, but we all appreciate and enjoy the sport. But it is one of those things I think we would have all particularly liked to have seen the World Juniors continue and go on.
Yeah, I think it's one of those Canadian traditions to watch it with the family over Christmas.
Yeah, and maybe not even just Canadian, but any, country that is big into hockey. I know Russians really like the World Juniors, Swedes, the Finns, all those guys go pretty crazy for it as well. Obviously not to the same extent as us, but they still enjoy it fairly well. And it's unfortunate not to see some of this young talent that you get to see every year. But yeah, so again, this was kind of our short topic of the day, kind of one of those things we wanted to bring up and mention. Another thing that's a small topic, obviously John Madden, late December 28th, unfortunately passed away. And I think all of us, have fond memories of both listening to John Madden and, I know about all of us play the Madden games. But yeah, so for me personally, as a broadcast news student, I've always looked up to Madden and really, really enjoyed his stuff because he revolutionized that industry. He changed the way sports broadcasters are viewed. As opposed to just these guys that you can kind of listen to and shut off every once in a while. This was a guy that you would tune in and watch.
Well, I know a lot of people, they become fans of football generationally. They learn it from their parents and they're watching it with that. I came from a family that was not interested in football at all. And so it really was John Madden and the Madden football games that helped me learn more about the game and fall in love with it. Like I remember playing Madden 96 on the Sega Genesis. That I think was my first Madden game that I ever played. And, I played that for years until I got my PS1 and then got, which one was it? The one that had Eddie George on it. I think Madden 2001.
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. And then I just, from there, I was playing Madden every year, learning more and more about the game and developing my love for it. And John Madden is a direct influence on that for sure. He's going to be very missed. And we're going to have to find somebody else to educate these younger generations that want to come into the game and don't like the dry analytics that you get from some of these other announcers and analysts.
Yeah.
So I saw some of the documentary about him, and what I thought was most fun is he was teaching the camera crew, like he was taking them to practices, he was taking them through game film, and he was showing them how to properly shoot the big plays, how to keep up with watching the offensive linemen and defensive linemen battle it out, and watching the A and B gaps, things like that. And I thought that was really spectacular to see, because someone sitting on my couch watching football believes it's a very easy game, but John was able to show the audience that this is a chess match with big players and coaches. It's really, it's not A and B. It's really A to Z. It's fantastic to see.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, he really showed that it was, a complicated game, but he didn't make it so complicated that your average person couldn't learn and understand what he was saying. The way he drew plays up on the screens and how he was always showing things on the teleprompter and stuff, he was really good at educating in a simplistic way while still showing how complex the game really is.
Yeah, and I was just gonna touch on that. Tony Romo in last week's game, obviously he did his best impression of John Madden as a tribute, and I looked at it and I was like, you know what, like it really kind of showed just the scale. Like even Romo, who I believe is one of the top broadcasters for the sport right now, because he does kind of bring that education and knowledge similar to kind of what Madden did, obviously on a much lower scale, but you could just see him trying so hard just to even replicate what was seemingly like a fifth of what Madden could do. And then you go back and kind of look at some of those Madden stuff where he's drawing crazy plays on the screen and just educating yourself or educating everyone, and you're like, wow, like it does really give you a good glimpse of how complicated the sport is, because it'll be like, oh, he's going through the A gap, but he's supposed to do this, that, and it just looks like an absolute mess of drawing on the screen, but that's the way coaches do it.
Yeah, he will be greatly missed.
That
He was revolutionized the sport and brought in a lot of new generations, and I mean, one of the best coaches ever as well.
yeah, and
Like,
that's one thing you can't forget
Like,
about him.
he coached a dominant Raiders team for years.
Yep.
And that, honestly, that's one of the reasons I ended up becoming a Steelers fan is, I look back through history and I looked at that rivalry between the Steelers and the Raiders in the 70s and 80s, and it was just so amazing watching the chess match that they would always be playing.
And it really was a chess match.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, obviously we're getting close to the end of the regular season here, and one thing that I kind of want to talk about is going into the MVP, or not just necessarily the MVP, but the awards that the NFL typically gives out. And I know all of us have kind of compiled a list of the people that we're going to go over. Obviously, the awards are the MVP award, Offensive Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, both Offensive and Rookie of the Years, Comeback Player of the Year, and Coach of the Year. So I think for the start, I'm going to go with Coach of the Year, because this could be a really interesting conversation. For me personally, I'm choosing Zach Taylor, head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. The reason I'm choosing him is because he has a team that so many people looked at the beginning of the year and said, this team is going to be bad. Obviously, for instance, you being a Steelers fan, you always call them the Bungles because they're a bunch of bums. And that has always been the way. I always looked at Joe Burrow and said, this is a guy who's going to be able to take this team and get them more wins than they realistically should. But, I didn't expect this level. And you do have to give credit to Zach Taylor, because he's putting his team in positions to win. He has the right coordinators around him. Obviously, it's not all him, and having a quarterback like Joe Burrow massively helps that. But, we've seen with Matt Nagy, he isn't capable of coaching to that level with a quality quarterback in Justin Fields. So it does really help. So I'm interested to see who you guys have for your Coach of the Year.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Joe Burrow, because that would be the reason I disagree with you on Zach Taylor is he's done a good job, But Joe Burrow has really taken that team onto his shoulders there, and I think he's much more the reason. I would look actually across the AFC to a team that I despise even more than the Bengals, unfortunately, and Bill Belichick. Like he's gone and he's got himself a rookie quarterback. Everybody counted the Patriots out this year. They're like, oh, they're in a rebuild phase. They're not going to be able to do anything. And here he is still winning the AFC East. And I think that's just, it speaks to how impressive and talented he is. And going back to the previous mention of John Madden, I think Bill Belichick is the new number one coach of our generation for sure. Much like John Madden was back in the day, he was the GOAT then. Bill Belichick is the GOAT now. Unfortunately, I hate to say it, and I hate seeing him in the playoffs some more because he is so hard to play against. He is such a genius both on the offensive and defensive sides of the ball. So that Bill Belichick would be my choice for Coach of the Year.
And that one's pretty hard to dispute, just obviously because of the fact that you do look at what he's been able to do with Mac Jones and that team.
Right. Well, and I mean, he's even shown that he doesn't have to rely on Mac Jones. They had that game against Buffalo early in the year that was snowy and gross, and he went, you know what? Let's just run the ball, not even put Mac Jones in dangerous position to get hurt or throw an interception and affect his confidence in any way. And they just ran the ball down Buffalo's throat and still managed to pull out a win.
Yeah, Mac Jones only ended up throwing 3 passes in that game. Was it 4?
Yeah, 4 passes.
Which is insane to think about in modern NFL. He
completed 3 of them. Yeah, he was 3 for 4 on the day.
Yeah, Josh, how about you? Who do you got for Coach of the Year?
I got 2 honorable mentions, and I think Mike Tomlin has to be mentioned as well. I think for the fact that he's the most winning coach in 15 years is pretty huge. And it's a milestone that not many people have reached. Obviously, he can accredit Big Ben. And another honorable mention, my pick's kind of a dark horse, but another honorable mention is Mike Vrabel. I think without Derrick Henry, the fact that he still only lost 4 games has really taken the wind out of the sails. And what he's done with Ryan Tannehill deserves a ton of credit. I mean, this is a guy that looked like his career was definitely washed up after Miami, and now he's playing at a high caliber level. I've never seen a turnaround like that before personally, but I think Nick Sirianni has to be the coach of the year. What he's done with the Eagles, a brand new quarterback, basically a rookie in Jalen Hurts. Bill Belichick got all of his defensive players back that he didn't have last year that missed the COVID year. So I'm going to give him a little bit less benefit of the doubt. But Mike Vrabel isn't even in the conversation. And it's sad to see because the Eagles were projected to get the number 1 pick this year. And now they're going to be potentially dethroning the Cowboys later on tonight as they're going to worry them when they win. That's my prediction. But that'd be mine. Nick Sirianni's definitely getting looked over for sure.
I really like that honorable mention you had of Mike Vrabel. He was on my short list. He was a close number 2 behind Bill Belichick, because he has done a phenomenal job and he is a defensive genius.
Oh, without
I always loved watching him play, and as a coach, he's doing such a great job. Like he's going to be great for years to come. And I appreciate you throwing Mike Tomlin in there. I couldn't really pick a team that was 8-7-1. And give that coach the year.
But he's dealt with 2 injuries from Big Ben. He's dealt with a very frustrating group of young men that he's developing, and I think he's done a wonderful job.
That's true. Yes. Yeah.
We also have to give him.
That we went from 4 weeks ago when everybody was calling for his head and saying, "Let's fire Mike Tomlin" for some unknown reason.
Yeah, I also look at, another thing we always have to give credit for Mike Tomlin for dealing with is he dealt with Antonio Brown for what was it, 8 seasons of dealing with.
To be fair, Antonio Brown was not always like he is now.
This is true.
He changed dramatically
after that
he took that really bad headshot from Vontaze Burfict, and that was his 2nd or 3rd concussion. He came back a completely different person.
True.
Like, he walks different, he talks different, his mannerisms are all different. Like, he has some serious brain issues which are outside of his fault and his control, and I feel bad for him.
Yep.
Because he's doing some stupid things, but I don't think it's entirely his fault. Those concussions ruined his life.
As
100%.
someone,
It's almost like Dennis Rodman, you know.
as someone who has had
not dominant, but
yeah, no, I hear you. As someone who has had a major concussion and has had to deal with that kind of stuff, I totally understand that. But yeah, so moving over, I do like how we have all three different candidates for it. I do like that.
I felt like Coach of the Year was one of the ones that was going to be a tough one for us to agree on.
absolutely.
And I think that's the same for all the voters as well, because it's been a very middling season. You know, no team has really gone above and beyond and been able to say, "Oh, that's our coach that's doing that."
Yeah, no coaches stood out so utterly. Again, like for all three of us, we all have really good points of why the coach that we chose should win it.
Yeah. Yeah, whereas some of these other awards, I have a feeling that we're all going to be agreeing on a couple of them.
Yeah, so I'm actually going to get you, Sterling, to get your vote for Comeback Player of the Year first.
Okay. And Comeback Player of the Year, well, I'll be talking about your boy here because he's led the Bengals into a AFC North Division championship, essentially, you know, and they're looking real strong going into the playoffs. Joe Burrow. You know, he had a horrific leg injury last year. I wasn't sure if he was going to come back the same guy. I thought we were going to be looking at, you know, the next Teddy Bridgewater, you know, guys like that have had bad knee injuries come back and they're just not the same guy. But after his slow start to the season, he's turned it up. It helps having a guy like Jamar Chase to throw the ball to, but he's also got a lot of other tools around him, and he's been really good at making his reads and not just zeroing in on Chase. You know, he makes sure to move the ball around and keep defenses guessing. He would be my Comeback Player of the Year for sure, Joe Burrow.
Yeah. How about you, Josh?
Dak Prescott. As much as I hate to say it, but the guy signed a monster deal, came off an injury, and now they're gonna potentially get the number 2 seed in the NFC East. That's pretty good. But I respect the Joe Burrow a lot. I think it could be a coin flip on either one, to be honest.
Yeah, for my
that.
yeah, for myself, I'm also going to go with Dak Prescott just because he's also coming off a horrific leg injury. I don't know if it was his knee or his ankle or if it like ankle, yeah. But it is one of those things you're looking at him going, is this guy going to come back looking like the same player? And honestly, he looks better. This is the best Dak Prescott has ever looked. You know, and again, as much as we all hate the Cowboys, and that's the funny thing is we all do hate the Cowboys, and we do kind of have to look at the Cowboys and have them seriously be looked at as a potential Super Bowl candidate. I don't think any of us think they're going to the Super Bowl, but they are a serious contender. But yeah, for me,
Dak Prescott. Once the playoffs starts, it's a whole new season.
But yeah, so we have Joe Burrow and then 2 for Dak Prescott.
Yeah, so I love that we all picked from teams that we severely dislike on that one.
Yep. So moving on to the next one. Josh, I'm gonna get you to say your Defensive Rookie of the Year. I feel like this one is gonna be pretty unanimous between all three of us.
I don't want to say. Micah Parsons is without doubt the Defensive Player of the Year. I don't even think it's really much of a I can't even compare to anyone else. Maybe the linebacker from the Browns, but it's not even close. It's not even close. But yeah, you know, he's a phenomenal athlete and he's a freak of an athlete. And I laughed when the Cowboys drafted him because of his concerns about him pulling a knife on his college teammates and, you know, some of his locker room antics. But you know, the Cowboys are laughing at me now as he strip sacks and runs into the end zone on Monday night. So, yeah, it has to be him. He's a pretty generational talent. Him and DeMarcus Lawrence are going to be menacing for Washington for years.
Well, and I mean, not only the concerns, but he also sat out last year with the COVID restrictions. And so, you know, there was questions about his in-game shape. Was he going to be able to go? But, I mean, he averaged, I think it was just over 8 tackles a game this year, which is impressive for a rookie. And honestly, that was who I was going to go with for Defensive Rookie of the Year as well.
Yeah, for me, I think this is our first clean slate. It has to be Micah Parsons. You just look at what he has been able to do, and there was talk saying like this was comparable to Lawrence Taylor's rookie year, where he was the only defensive rookie to ever win the defensive player of the year in his rookie season. And it's just the comparables are really there. You can put him on the edge, get him to rush the quarterback as a top tier edge rusher. You can get him as a middle linebacker, and he can be a 3-down middle linebacker. I'm pretty sure you could throw him at corner. He could succeed at that. Throw him at D tackle. You could put him anywhere on the field, and he's going to be a seriously dangerous weapon.
Yeah, he is very versatile that way, which is really impressive.
Yeah. Now, moving over to the offensive rookie of the year, I feel, again, this is going to be a pretty clean slate. For me, I have to choose Jamar Chase. What he's been able to accomplish over this season, it is just way too, it's impressive. I think right now he is 4th in the league in receiving yards, and you don't often see rookies be in top 5 for receiving yards, but when you do, like, these guys are special. And the connection that he has with Joe Burrow, that just makes it even so much more dangerous. And then obviously
you got to look at the guys who have more yards than him. You're looking at Cooper Kupp, Devontae Adams, like the top receivers in the league, hands down. And he's in that conversation now. He's arrived.
Oh, without a doubt.
I believe it's Deebo Samuel and Justin Jefferson are the only 4 above him.
Yeah.
Along that list, and like he's a top 5, and this is his first year. That's pretty good. I'll give you guys that one. I think personally though, I got to go with Mac Jones, and I know that's kind of a B- answer, but the fact that the rookie was able to step into one of the most winning franchises in history and lead them to the playoffs and fill Brady's shoes, it's a lot of pressure on a young man.
For sure. The only reason,
lot of pressure on a young man.
Without a doubt, and I feel like with that one, the only reason that I would go Jamar Chase over Mac Jones is because he has the greatest coach of all time. And, we saw how good this team actually is because, for instance, they can run the ball, or they can win a game with running the ball and having Mac Jones only throw the ball 4 times. But yeah, it is kind of one of those things where Mac Jones did look insanely impressive this year. And if he did win the award, would I look at that and be like, Jamar Chase got robbed? Yeah, but I also wouldn't be mad.
Well, no, because it's tough for them to choose a wide receiver over a quarterback for a lot of these rewards, unfortunately. Usually it goes to a quarterback.
100%. I got to agree. The one point I guess I would use to counter that, other than having the best coach, is Jamar Chase and Joe Burrow have known each other for 4 years, and they have built this chemistry for a long time. Whereas Mac Jones had to learn one of the most complex systems in NFL history. So it could go both ways. And I'm like you said, I wouldn't be upset either if Jamar Chase won because he did set an NFL record.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I know that those two are the top 2 in the running for that offensive rookie of the year. But I will honorable mention Naji Harris. He's had a phenomenal year. He hasn't gotten a lot of yards, but he's had more touches than any other rookie this draft class, and he has not dropped the ball once. Absolutely 0 fumbles on the ground, which is impressive for a rookie. A lot of rookie running backs will drop the ball a few times in their rookie year.
Yep, and so especially being rushed.
Him, but my vote would go to Jamar Chase as well. Yep. Just because if you look at the comparisons to Randy Moss's rookie season, there's a lot of similarities there, but the big difference is Randy Moss had a lot of supporting pieces around him, and he also had, I believe, Dante Culpepper as his quarterback. I can't remember who his opposite wide receiver was, but Jamar Chase doesn't really have a lot of that. He is the number 1 de facto guy, whereas Randy Moss had more tools around him. So very impressive, and I think Jamar Chase should take it this year.
Yeah, it helps when you have coverage on other receivers, definitely.
It does.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the one thing I want to say for Jamar Chase is he also came over a little bit of adversity from the preseason where the dude couldn't catch a ball. And we were all looking at him like, oh, wow, Cincinnati screwed up. Like,
yeah, like what a bust.
If he can't catch a football, then it doesn't matter how good the chemistry is. If he can't catch an NFL ball, it doesn't matter. And then, Jamar Chase said, sit down, shut up, and watch. And we went, okay, yep. All right, Sterling, I want you to give us your defensive rookie of the year. Or wait, no.
Defensive player of the year?
Defensive player of the year, thank you.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure we're all going to agree on this one too. And I mean, it open and shut case as far as I'm concerned. It's TJ Watt. He's leading the league in sacks. He only needs one more tomorrow to tie Michael Strahan's record. And I think he'll probably beat that record tomorrow because he's not going to stop at just one sack. He also leads the league in a lot of other categories. And I don't think there's anybody that even comes close. I don't think it's even a debate this year. It should be TJ Watt, hands down.
Did he miss 2 games?
He did
miss 2 games. So everybody that's like, oh, if he gets the record, it doesn't count because it's an 18-game season. He's actually only played 15 games so far.
Yeah, it has to be TJ. I would love to come out and jokingly say, oh, you got to throw Robert Quinn as an honorable mention just from what he's been able to do. But TJ has just been on a completely new level. And again, he did miss those 2 games. So even if it was a regular 16-game season, if he breaks the sack record, he would have done it in 15 games of playing.
Well, and if you look at the games that the Steelers have won, it's directly a result of him. Like he wins those games for the Pittsburgh Steelers. They're down. They need to get the ball back. He's in there with a strip sack. Yep. Or he's knocking the ball down, forcing 3 and outs. He's getting pressure on the quarterback. Without him, the Steelers don't have a winning record this year. I think they probably only have about 4 wins this year without TJ Watt.
Yeah, Josh. Your answer? I'm assuming it's probably going to be similar.
I think it's just without question, TJ Watt. I was saying that. I remember saying that to you guys a little while ago, actually, and I thought that 4 weeks ago. The way he's playing, and when I watch, Pittsburgh games on the Monday nighters or whenever it is, I just see him clearly stand out. Like he is just a generational talent that won't be matched, much like his brother.
Right.
The one honorable mention is Micah Parsons, but the reason I guess why I wouldn't choose him is, he has DeMarcus Lawrence, and he has a great defensive line. TJ Watt doesn't get those kinds of openings. He has to push the lineman out of the way more times than not to get to the quarterback. So if you put him in Micah Parsons' situation, I think you'd see a record-breaking history at double the amount. Like it would be insane the amount of sacks TJ would truly rack up.
Yeah. I mean, TJ is really the one that opens up the opportunities for the rest of the defense on that Steelers line. Like we saw it on Monday night. He got 4 sacks himself, but then they had to start triple teaming him, and he was still almost making it to the quarterback. As a result of that triple team, we got 5 more sacks across the rest of the defense and had a 9-sack game. So he creates opportunities for the rest of his teammates.
And I think looking back at that last game, what really cemented the Defensive Player of the Year award for me with him, and obviously I had already looked at this previous weeks going, it's pretty likely that it's going to be him, but it's when he was looking like he was going to rush at Baker, and he just paused there. And he's just looking at him. It basically looked like he was standing there with his hands on his hips, like, okay, what are you going to do? Baker throws the ball, he swats it out of the air, and he just points and starts laughing at him. And to me, I just looked at that and I went, he is so in this guy's head, and he has just completely taken over this game. It doesn't even matter at this point. Like, this guy, he can do whatever he wants.
Oh, yeah, he was so tuned into that game. He knew exactly what Baker was calling every time. And that was the point he was making in the fourth quarter there, is that the Browns are trying to rally and come back, and TJ was like, no, I know what you're doing, and you think I'm just going to keep running at you, but no, I'm everywhere. You want to go somewhere with the ball, you better be ready to deal with me.
Yeah. All right, Josh, give us your Offensive Player of the Year.
Okay. This one's kind of a bit to unpack, I guess. My rationale and reasoning is I'm kind of sick of the quarterbacks getting all the awards. I understand it, but it's just such an easy award to give. I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers win it for the simple fact that I believe he's a choker. That might be a little controversial, but he just doesn't perform. I'd like to see maybe Cooper Kupp or Jonathan Taylor get it, and I'm not really picky on who gets it, if that's fair. I would be comfortable nominating two.
Yeah,
It's
Sterling.
they both had historic years. I guess Jonathan Taylor has the offensive line, but Cooper Kupp also has Matthew Stafford, so they both have reasons to be helped out by. But
Yeah, Sterling.
what about you guys?
Yeah, I was 100% on board for Cooper Kupp for Offensive Player of the Year. He has done phenomenal things. He's on pace to possibly even break a couple of records this week. I know he spoke about how he doesn't think that the records will really count. They should have an asterisk because he had extra games to complete this, but he only needs, I think, 12 receptions and 130 some yards, which for him this season, that's just another day at the office. So I think if he plays the whole game, he will probably break both those records, and I think he should get the Offensive Player of the Year at that point. Not to take away from Jonathan Taylor, he did some amazing things in Indianapolis. He took a team that, everybody had counted out at the start of the year, and they were like, oh yeah, they're going to be, bottom 5. They might even get that first overall pick, and he pulled a Derrick Henry and took the team on his shoulders and was like, no, I'm going to make sure we win these games. I'm going to make sure we get to the playoffs. Although I'm hoping that doesn't happen tomorrow. I'm hoping they can shut him down in Jacksonville and they lose. That way my Steelers can get into the playoffs, hopefully. But yeah, Cooper Kupp, I think Offensive Player of the Year for sure.
Yeah, for me, I'm looking at this Offensive Player of the Year. It's really down between Cooper Kupp and Jonathan Taylor. Again, I would not be upset if either one of these guys won this award. I think they both deserve it. For me, I am going to go with Jonathan Taylor just for the simple reason of he really did take a franchise and go, you know what? You brought in Carson Wentz, who not a lot of people were happy with. No one was really certain what he was capable of doing. And you said, you know what? Give me the ball. I'm just going to completely win all of these games for us. I think when you look back at all of the games the Colts have won, I think it's a direct result of what Jonathan Taylor is doing on the field. And not to take away from what Cooper Kupp was doing, because he was phenomenal, but he also has a lot of other weapons around him on that offense that makes him super, super dangerous. And obviously, the addition of Matthew Stafford, who has always been a top 10 quarterback by any metric, he was just stuck in Detroit with nothing around him. That definitely helps. But yeah, for me, I have to give it to JT just because he is doing something. He is performing better than every other player at his position this year.
So I was going down here and I've been researching. Jonathan Taylor was significantly neutralized without Quentin Nelson, and Quentin Nelson is such a dominant offensive lineman that maybe he should be considered for Offensive Player of the Year as well. I've seen a couple videos this year, and maybe you guys should check it out after this. Is go on YouTube and type in his biggest blocks. He's been like rolling people onto the ground, like he's a monster. So even him, maybe perhaps he's quite a game changer out there. And he ran over the Patriots defensive line as well. He was guarding two guys at the same time.
Yep.
Yeah, I've seen some of those blocks, and you're right. And that was actually part of why Jonathan Taylor dropped down for me, because I almost feel like if JT had gotten hurt, their next man up running back could have come in and maybe not done as well, but he still would have run really well. Whereas you take Cooper Kupp off of that LA Rams offense, and I don't think they're a playoff team anymore.
No, that's fair. That's a good point. That's
Yep.
a very good point.
Yes, indeed. All right, so moving on to the most coveted award in the NFL, the MVP award.
The MVP. Before we get to it, we've got somebody in the chat here who is saying Coop for MVP. So
Yep.
We've got someone in the chat that thinks Cooper Kupp should also be the MVP as well as the Offensive Player of the Year.
Yep. Well, for me personally, I look at the MVP award and I'm giving it to Joe Burrow. This was, I've always, for the last couple of weeks, I've been saying my MVP is Jonathan Taylor. And when I kind of sat back and looked at the season, I know a lot of people are talking about Aaron Rodgers being the MVP, but I'm looking at Joe Burrow and going, his numbers are virtually identical to Aaron Rodgers. The only difference between their numbers is the interceptions. Everything else, either Joe Burrow has higher or they're virtually the same. And the difference between Joe Burrow is he is playing on a team that is far worse than Green Bay. He doesn't have the same weapons. Obviously, he has Jamar Chase. He doesn't really have, like, the defense was surprisingly better than what it was, but at the end of the day, I think just looking at the last couple of weeks, Joe Burrow has just been a completely different monster out there. I know we all jokingly say Aaron Rodgers looks like he's bored out there. He just doesn't look like he's trying. But at the same point, you look at Joe Burrow, and he's also making it look so easy. But yeah, that for me, my MVP pick has to be Joe Burrow. I'm kind of curious to see what you guys say about that.
Who have you got, Josh?
I believe it has to be Aaron Rodgers. That record is quite phenomenal, only losing 13 games, and you saw what that offense did with Jordan Love out there. I don't know if that speaks more to Jordan Love, but I respect Joe Burrow for all these conversations. I really do. I think he's gonna have a gold jacket without a doubt. So I would accept Joey Burrow as well, and an honorable mention to Tom Brady, still out there kicking butt at his prime age.
Yeah,
but we can't just give it to someone based off age. So
right,
for sure.
Yeah, just because he's the GOAT doesn't mean he should get it every year. Exactly.
That's correct.
And yeah, I mean, I looked at it as in the same way. It's the most valuable player to their team, and so I also have to agree with Josh. And as much as you're gonna hate this, Brendan, it's Aaron Rodgers. Because he is most valuable person to his team. I think the Bengals, Joe Burrow gets hurt, they probably still win a few of those games, and they probably still make the playoffs, possibly even still win the division. Green Bay, without Aaron Rodgers, they've got a losing record. They're not in the playoff hunt, and he does. He's going out there and making it look easy.
I am more than confident saying they would pick top 5 without Aaron Rodgers.
Yes, I agree. I agree completely. I don't think Jordan Love's quite there to the point where he could lead that team the way Aaron Rodgers does. And the fact that he's going out there and making it look so easy and like he's bored and just, a couple passes, touchdown, all right, let's go hang out on the bench. It makes me wonder, like, if he turns it up a notch, how good does that Packers offense then become? And that team is suspect on the defensive side of the ball. But if you're putting up 40-plus points a game, you're going to win most of those games. And I feel like Aaron Rodgers can do that on a daily basis after rolling out of bed 10 minutes ago, throwing the pads on and getting out there. Like, he's got such a brilliant football mind, and he's so dialed in this year. And I think the fact that he's been getting so much hate from people and disrespect over his vaccination status, which I also was hating on him a few weeks ago for as well, and was saying I don't want him to get the MVP, but I know he deserves it because he is most valuable to his team. We saw that when he was out on the COVID list. The Packers just could not get anything going without him, and as soon as he came back, it was like a completely different team.
Yeah, and I can't really disagree with you guys on that one too much. Again, he is phenomenal, and it is hard to go against him. It is hard. And will my Bears biasy, choose me to lean a little bit more towards Joe Burrow? Of course. But yeah, it's hard to dispute what you guys are saying on that aspect.
And to touch one more little aspect on that, it's unfortunate that he's only had one championship, because I think if he even had, let's say, 3, we'd be having a very real conversation as if he was maybe the greatest of all time as well. The talent is there to the point that, like, he is a better thrower of the football and reader of the field than Tom Brady is. And I know that's going to sound wild, but it's just you watching him play. To Sterling's point, it's like watching a modern Michael Jordan. It's crazy. Like the way he just goes out there, finds a way to motivate himself and just dominate. It's really nice to watch, actually.
Yeah, I'm really hoping he leaves Green Bay. I'm tired of seeing him.
I don't think you have to worry about that. I'm sure he's out of there this year.
Yeah, but in true
I
Green Bay,
think he's going to Denver.
I think in true Green Bay fashion, they're going to make it to the NFC Championship game and they're going to completely blow it. Fingers crossed, hope so. Hopefully they get blown out in their first playoff game.
Well, hey, I mean, if they make it to the conference championship and lose, then there's that in itself will be another record for Aaron Rodgers because he will then have the most losses in conference championship games among any quarterback in history.
Yep.
True. And I mean, to touch on Aaron Rodgers, I mean, yet again, but if they line up with San Francisco, I think they're going to have a bad day.
Yeah. So, speaking of the current playoffs, I want to talk about the playoff picture. So, obviously, looking at the NFC, the Packers have officially clinched the number one spot. I don't think they can actually get moved out of that spot. I think they have clinched it.
They have, yes.
Yeah, but then we have the Rams locking up the number one spot in the West. The Bucks locking up the number one spot in the East or no, South.
The Rams do not have the number one spot locked up yet, actually.
You know what? Yeah, you're right.
49ers beat the Rams this weekend and
the Cardinals
win, they will actually leapfrog into that second overall spot.
You are
very
correct.
Possible.
Which it is very possible. And since
it is because the Rams are playing, or I mean the 49ers are playing for their playoff careers.
Yep.
And so they got to win to get in, and I think they're going to come out strong. Hopefully with Trey Lance. If they try to go with Jimmy G, that's a different story. If they're playing Jimmy Garoppolo, then the Rams are going to beat them.
Yeah, that's a tough one for sure. But yeah, no, it is looking really interesting to see what some of these teams are doing, especially for the NFC, because I do think the NFC is the stronger division this year, just because it's a lot better teams. You know, for instance, you have a couple teams who are 9-7. You know, you have obviously the Steelers. The best they can finish is 8-1. They could potentially still make the playoffs.
Yep.
But yeah, I'm looking at or go ahead.
Yeah, I know we talked about this through the year, and that's just it. The NFC, it was clear cut who was making the playoffs for a lot of weeks now. But as a result, when we get to the playoffs, that makes it a lot harder to figure out who's going to continue through to the Super Bowl. Because we've got these teams that are fairly evenly matched in the NFC, whereas the AFC was a little more spread out, if you will. When it came to getting into that, nobody really took that number one spot at any point throughout the season. You know, there was a lot of shuffling going on, whereas in the NFC, it was always, we knew the Packers were going to win. We knew the Bucks were going to win. After like week 5, 6, we knew the Cowboys were going to win. I know Washington gave them a run for their money, but they settled that down pretty quick.
Oh, did they ever?
Yeah.
Did they ever? Good
how depressing was that game to watch?
I turned it off after the first quarter.
Fair enough.
After you go down 28-0 in the first, there's no game left.
Hey, my team went down 28-0 and we made a game of it. But yes,
but it's not. You know, it's not.
No, it's not fun to watch.
It's not a no-name quarterback back there without Chase Young on defense, and yeah, there's a lot of elements. That organization needs to be structurally fixed from the top.
Yeah, it starts with Dan Snyder. They gotta.
It really does. You gotta.
Yeah, so a bunch of other, you know, obviously the Rams are gonna make the Bucks, Cowboys, Cardinals, Eagles have locked in. But yeah, for the NFC, it's looking like the only teams that are in the hunt are the 49ers and the Saints. Yep. I have a better feeling that the 49ers are gonna end up winning. I have more hope that they are going to actually get in as opposed to the Saints, just because I think they are a better team. But moving over to the NFC or the AFC side, obviously the only teams that are confirmed are the Titans, the Chiefs, Bengals, Bills, the Patriots. But you have teams like the Colts, Chargers, Raiders, Steelers, and Ravens, all teams that could end up making the playoffs. Some funky things need to happen for the Steelers and Raiders to make it, or the Steelers and Ravens to make it. But yeah, it's interesting for sure to see that side of it.
Yeah, I mean, as a Steelers fan, I need the Colts to lose. So Jacksonville has got to beat the Colts for the Steelers to even have a chance. If the Colts win, it doesn't matter at that point if the Steelers win or not.
Yeah.
Would we be having this conversation if John Harbaugh decided to actually, kick the field goal and maybe win one of those 2 games?
Oh no, I said that a couple weeks ago too. Like like if any quarterback or any coach is on the hot seat, it should be Jim Harbaugh, not Mike Tomlin. Like Jim
I hear
Harbaugh
ya.
cost himself 2 wins this year because he got greedy and went for 2 points instead of just kicking the field goal, going to overtime, and trusting in his offense.
Which
Like granted, I know they had a lot of injuries throughout the year, but why do you think you've got a better shot at a 2-point conversion than you do to drive the ball back down the field and score again? Especially when they were playing the Steelers and we couldn't move the ball on offense to save our lives. Like he cost himself not only a shot at the playoffs, but I think a shot at the division. Like they were 8-3 to start the year, and they're sitting at 8-8 now.
And the other thing is too, when they were playing the Packers, I understand that call to a sense. Like you're playing with a backup quarterback, I'm going to go try and win the game because if we go to overtime with Aaron Rodgers, we're going to end up in a loss. But in retro, the hindsight's 2020. But looking at the 2 games, like you thought he would have learned his lesson the following week, but it's mind-boggling.
And that's really just the thing. You would think
it's almost like that first time because they only missed that 2-point conversion by like literally 3 inches. 3 inches to the left, and Andrews makes that catch. And so maybe that's what the thought was we were close last week. Let's try it again. Maybe we get it this time. But it did not work out for him, and it kind of made him look like a fool this year.
It really did.
Especially with 2 losses to the Bengals, too. That.
Well, and the 2 losses to the Bengals being horrific losses. Like, Joe Burrow in each of those games set his best statistical games each time that he played the Ravens. Which is not a good look when you play a team 2 times a year and their quarterback is setting records in both of those games.
And he did the first game he played against them too. He had a good game, so that's got to make him nervous a bit. I know how to read your defense really well, and I'm going to be here for the next 10, 11 years.
Yep. But yeah, looking at this, for the NFC, I think the real tough teams that are going to be there are obviously the Titans, the Chiefs, the Bengals, and the Patriots. I think those are the 4 best teams currently in the AFC playoff race right now. I think you could potentially see something with the Colts, but I'm just looking at what we have with the Titans. Obviously, if they get that number 1 seed locked up this week, they're facing the Texans, so they have a little bit of motivation to go get that done. They get Derrick Henry an extra week of being healthy. It's really, really difficult to see the Titans not be kind of that number 1 kind of this is the team to beat. Obviously, the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes, they are an incredible team. Their defense the last month and a half has severely stepped it up and are playing like an actual team.
They are last week.
Yep. But that again, the next team, Cincinnati, Joe Burrow, he said, you know what, I don't care who you are. I don't care what's going on. I'm going to absolutely torch you. And I think for Joe Burrow, the man has ice in his veins. He went into the SEC championship game, which I know a lot of people consider, a harder game to win than the national championship game just because of how good the SEC is. And then he was just ice cold, destroyed it, goes into the national championship game, 2 or 3 weeks later, and he just has, again, ice in his veins, doesn't look like anything's bothering him, and just casually beats Clemson and Trevor Lawrence, who was this year's first overall pick. I think they're going to be dangerous, and I do think the Patriots, obviously, with Bill Belichick, playoffs, I don't care who's at quarterback, it's Billy Belichick in the playoffs.
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, I look at the AFC too, and I see the Titans and the Patriots playing for the AFC Championship. Because as good as Pat Mahomes and Joe Burrow are, and even Josh Allen, I know you're not a fan of him, but all those teams were very streaky this year. You never knew whether they were going to come up and put 40 on you or if they were going to come up and put 7 out.
Oh, Josh Allen can do damage. He can do damage.
He can, but I just don't think he's got the same decision-making ability as Pat Mahomes and Joe Burrow have. And so I don't think he's really, in my opinion, in the conversation. I think the Bills are going to be one and done in the playoffs here. You know,
Interesting. That's bold. That's bold.
Well, I mean, I'm looking at the standings here too, and
with
how it's lining up, it looks like they're going to be playing the Patriots.
Yeah, you know what? You might be right. Because I would take the Patriots, I think, in that game.
Yep.
Especially since the Patriots lost to the Bills in their last matchup. Bill Belichick is not going to have that happen again. He's just simply not.
No.
Who has home court in that one?
It would be the Bills.
Yeah, I don't think it would change. They're both very northern, cold climates, so.
Yeah. Well, no, it might be the Bills. It depends on how this shakes out because they're both playing for that conference still.
Yeah, they're both 10-6.
Let me just say this about the two divisions. The AFC is truly kind of one of those things where we're looking at here, and it's almost telltale. But you look at the NFC, and I know the Packers are the strong one, but they have a history of choking. You have an aging Tom Brady and a Bucs organization that's a little bit on fire just before playoffs. And you have two streaking teams in San Francisco and the Eagles coming in. I think we're going to see a couple upsets in that NFC. And you have the Cardinals potentially dialing up the Cowboys first round. It's going to get real exciting.
Oh yeah. I think the NFC is going to be a really, really exciting playoff race because, again, you do have a team like the Eagles getting in there, and they are playing really, really hot right now. And if they can go out and upset the Cowboys in the last week, that gives them just even more motivation. And, Jalen Hurts has been performing really, really well. But yeah, I do think the Cowboys are a little... I look at who's in there right now for the NFC, and I say the biggest worry for me is the Cowboys, just because when they've lost this year, they have looked bad. And I just think the other teams, when they've lost, they may not have lost as badly, but their losses are kind of more justifiable losses. And for the Cowboys I think they got shut out by the Broncos. They shouldn't be shut out by the Broncos or lose the way that they did.
What would your guys' percentage of either I'm sorry, I don't know what division it is. Usually I would, but it'd be the Rams, Cardinals, and 49ers. What's the odds that one of them is represented in the Super Bowl?
Oh, I still, all season I've been talking Cardinals. They've had a bit of a backslide here in the last few weeks, but I think that's actually going to help them because the spotlight was on them so much through the first 10 weeks of the season. Everybody was talking about them, and I think the pressure got to them a bit, and they stepped back. But I think they're going to find a whole new gear at the start of the playoffs here, and James Conner is just going to run roughshod over these defenses, which is going to open up so many opportunities for Kyler Murray. Yeah, and I think the Cardinals are going to run away with the NFC and surprise a lot of people. I think they'll be playing in the Super Bowl this year.
I genuinely think you could see either the Cardinals or the Rams. I would be more comfortable saying the Cardinals, just because, again, they have just been talked about so much. They've had a little bit of a decline. I think they're going to kind of hit the reset button going into the playoffs and go, you know what? We don't need to be fancy. We don't need to be all this and that. We just need to go out there and play the football that we know how to play. Because when they do that, they are unbeatable. And Kyler Murray is a phenomenal quarterback. And if you get him doing his thing, he is going to be incredibly difficult to stop. Yeah. And, again...
I agree. And I mean, the thing is, when the playoffs start, what you've done through the season kind of goes out the window. It's a totally different mindset and a totally different
100%
teams play. And so the reason I have no faith in the Rams is Sean McVay. He is way too one-dimensional for a coach. And I think whoever they're playing in the first round, if they get past the first round, then in the second round, these coaches are going to look at them and go, well, we know that Cooper Kupp is their guy. So we're going to shut that down because we know Sean McVay has a really hard time adjusting his game plan once the game has started. And so these teams are going to figure out what the game plan is, because really it's been the same for 17 weeks now. And that's going to be the issue with the Rams, is that's why they couldn't beat the Patriots a few years ago, is they were just one-dimensional, and they are again.
Yeah, no, I can agree with you on that. The Rams, Sean McVay is a phenomenal coach, but he doesn't adjust well. He basically goes, this is my game plan, and if my game plan doesn't work, he kind of fizzles out a little bit. But yeah,
he's good at building a game plan through the week, but he's not so good at adjusting his game plan in the second quarter or at halftime if it's not working for him.
Yeah, you can often see him out coaching himself frequently, actually.
Yeah, exactly. It's like he gets tunnel vision on the plan that he's set out, and it ruins him.
Yeah, we've all played Madden and had a strategy going into a game, going like, oh, you know what, I'm going to run the ball the entire game, and then you have three and outs, and you're like, okay, well, maybe I need to actually throw the ball. Sean McVay, he will continue to pound that rock.
It's one of the reasons I'm such a big fan of the Steelers is Mike Tomlin's ability to adjust. I've seen it so many times, and I've been talking to people on game day, and they're like, oh man, your guys are losing. And I'm like, yeah, but it's only the first quarter. We don't really figure out how we're going to beat a team until halftime. And then they go in at half and they go, this is where they've been beating us. This is what's worked for us. This is how we win the game. As long as Pittsburgh is within 14 points at halftime, they have the potential to win every single game. The problem was we had 3 games where we were down by like 25 points at halftime, and it's really hard to come back that much.
Yep. There are very few teams that can have that ability to do that. And unfortunately, the Steelers, where they are right now, they aren't that team.
No. Honestly, I can only think of 4 coaches right now, maybe 5, that are good at that. And it's Bill Belichick, Mike Tomlin, Cliff Kingsbury, Bruce Arians, and Mike Vrabel. Those are the only ones that really have that ability to adjust their game plan on the fly and stump the other team in the process.
Yep. So I really think this playoffs is going to be really, really fun to watch. I really do. But you know what? We'll just have to see how the rest of this week goes, because obviously all the playoff spots aren't finalized. But yeah, so I know, Josh, over the week you wanted to kind of talk about the top 5 free agents and kind of go where we think they should go. So
I'm just going to cut you off for a quick second. Before we leave the NFL playoff picture here, I want to talk about that really bizarre scenario that is in effect. We talked about it this week. So if the Colts lose and the Steelers win their game, then in theory the Steelers are in. But the final game of the season is Chargers versus Raiders, and both of those teams hold the tiebreaker against Pittsburgh. And there's a scenario where they could tie and both get into the playoffs. So now we were talking that what's to stop them from taking a knee all game long, finishing that game 0-0 just so they can both get to the playoffs. Could you imagine the uproar and the chaos that would ensue in Roger Goodell's office and in NFL headquarters if something like that happened?
Yep. Well, seeing as, it's the Chargers and Raiders, obviously I think since the Chargers don't have fans, their fans don't really care. But the Raiders fans, they're the Raiders fans. If the Raiders fans saw that, people would die. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if they make the playoffs. Just seeing like, oh, Derek Carr takes a knee and we're just running out the clock. Why the fuck am I watching this game?
Oh, I'd be furious as a fan too. Like, you spend all this money to go to a game, though I don't know if they're allowed to have fans in the stands in LA right now. I think they just changed things around there so they couldn't be doing that, which
understandable.
Is interesting. No. But I'd be furious. You spend hundreds of dollars to get a ticket to a game just to watch everybody take a knee.
Yeah. It won't happen.
This is the first time I've ever seen this type of a scenario where the final game of the season could decide both teams going to the playoffs if they tie.
Yeah. Which I think, obviously it's not going to happen. These two teams hate each other. And with the Raiders, they have a very clear goal in mind. If they win, they get in for sure. And that's their best option. Yep.
Yeah, either one. Whichever one wins gets in.
Yep.
And so there's a lot on the line, and neither one of them really have momentum right now. So yeah, there are lots of reasons why they will play it out, and I think they will. I know they will play it out. Like, there's no chance that's going to happen. I just thought it was a very unique scenario that I had never encountered before, and I thought it would be interesting to bring up.
Oh, for sure. And it's one of those things where it's like a fun little, like, oh, this could happen, and it could be, but we all know it would never happen, mainly because a lot of people would die. Goodell would be, you know, who,
I
like,
think
what could he do?
I think they'd be able to hit them with collusion. They'd be able to strip them of picks.
Oh, that's what they would do. Like, Roger
Yeah.
Goodell
Yeah.
would take picks away for sure, but that's
Yeah.
really all they could do. What
All they
else
could do, yeah, that's
could
all
he
they
do?
could do. And I
Yeah.
would trade a first round pick for a playoff appearance. Why not?
Well, I look at that point, I think Goodell would probably end up stripping all of the picks from both of those teams, going, you know what, like, I don't think just taking a first round pick is, enough for a situation like that. And yeah, to the comment, seeing the Colts, can't see the Colts losing to the Jags. I think we can agree with that. The Jags have managed to beat the Colts in Jacksonville. Again, like Sterling said, for the last 7 years, but it's Jacksonville.
Okay.
Come on.
I find that comment funny because Carson Wentz has proven time and time again he can beat himself.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.
Come on, it's time for Trevor Lawrence to actually come out of his shell. Have himself a big 5-touchdown game to end the season and show everybody that he really was a worthy first overall pick. Like, come on. It's Trevor Lawrence's time. Now that there's no chance of him making the playoffs, and I'm not going to have to deal with him as a Steelers fan this season, let's have him a big game from Lawrence.
And let's have just a 3 interception game from Wentz, which is highly possible.
But honestly, that is more possible than Trevor Lawrence having a good game.
Yep.
It is, yeah. Though I have a feeling the coach would shut that down after interception 1, and we would just see the ball being handed to Jonathan Taylor the rest of the game at that point.
I would have to agree with
There's
you on
interception number 1. I know 2 and 3 are right behind it. Let's just start handing the ball off.
Yeah.
No more Wentz.
It's Carson. We need you to sit down for the rest of the day.
Do you start Jonathan Taylor, or do you rest him?
I mean, you got to win to get in. And so really at this point, you still have to play him. If they already had a playoff spot locked up, then sure, you sit him. But at this point, you sit him and you lose the game and you don't make the playoffs because of it, there are going to be severe repercussions for that coach.
Yeah, I think I do think it is one of those situations where, you have to start Jonathan Taylor, but if you get a decent enough lead, you pull him. Like, I think if Indianapolis goes up by 14 to 21 points, it is one of those situations where you pull him because he is your offense. But yeah. Well, thanks for coming out. But yeah, we're still going to continue on.
Yes, yeah, we can go on to that next segment now. I just really wanted to touch on that bizarre scenario.
Oh yeah. But yeah, moving over to the free agents. So yeah, Josh, this is kind of a little bit of your baby, so take it away.
I'll give you guys the top 5, and then I'll let you think about it really quick. Let's take salary cap out of equation here. Let's just play it. Let's just have some fun and see where you'd like to see certain receivers end up. For example, this is according to PFF. So I'll take theirs. It is number 1 wide receiver Devontae Adams. Number 2, Teron Armstead, New Orleans Saints. Number 3 is Chris Godwin, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 4 is Chandler Jones, Arizona Cardinals. And number 5 is Von Miller, Los Angeles Rams. But let's scrap Von and let's throw in Allen Robinson at 6. I really am not interested to see where a 33-year-old goes. I'd rather see where Allen Robinson goes at 5.
Yeah, fair enough. So who'd you have for number 1 there again? Devontae Adams.
Where I'd like to see him go personally is the LA Chargers. I think they could use a wide receiver, and giving Justin Herbert his Jamar Chase would be fantastic. Teron Armstead, I mean, as a Naji fan, I would love to see him go. Any offensive lineman, really, at this point, go to the Steelers. I think they could use some interior help, or even a left tackle. I'm not too familiar or expertise with what their offensive line looks like, but I think any kind of help would be very helpful. Chris Godwin, I'd like to see him stay in Tampa. I think him and Brady have excellent chemistry. And Chandler Jones, I think where he needs to go is Cincinnati, because they lack a good edge rusher, or perhaps a seasoned one. And of course, Allen Robinson, I'd like to see him come to my Washington team big time and pair with Terry McLaurin. What about you guys?
Well, I disagree with you on Devontae Adams. I don't think he's going to the Chargers, because I think the Chargers are going to make a strong push for Juju Smith-Schuster. And so they're going to fill out their wide receiver core with that. I think Devontae Adams stays with Aaron Rodgers. I think wherever Aaron goes, Devontae goes, because he's Aaron Rodgers' favorite target. He's getting tons of yards, and if they can both go to a team that's promising them Super Bowl contention, that's what's going to happen. And I think for them to go together would be the only way that a team would be able to convince them both to take a bit of a pay cut to stay together. And so I think Devontae Adams goes to the Broncos with Aaron Rodgers.
Nice.
And who is the second one?
Armstead.
Tyrone Armstead, offensive line.
Armstead.
Left tackle from the Saints.
Okay. I mean, yeah, I would agree with you with the Steelers. I was actually more looking at Brandon Sheriff to go to the Steelers than Teron Armstead, because we're going more towards a run-first team, and we need to shore up the right side of that line more than the left. I don't know what our quarterback situation is going to look like in Pittsburgh next year, and so I don't know if we're going to be passing it a lot, and if we are, it's probably going to be that Matt Canada offense where it's quick passes, less than 3 seconds to get the ball out, and so that blind side tackle isn't going to be quite as important as he is when you're taking a 5-step drop and waiting for a play to develop. We need to shore up the right side of that line with somebody that can open up holes for a running back, and I think Brandon Sheriff would be a better fit there. So, I mean, I'm not really sure who else is in need of offensive line help. Maybe getting some more protection for somebody like Lamar Jackson, so he doesn't get hurt again. I could see him going to Baltimore, because Andre Villanueva is aging, and I don't think he's going to be that top tier left tackle for much longer.
Yep.
All right. What about Chris Goodwin?
Chris Godwin?
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Chris Godwin. Oh, yes. I actually see him and Allen Robinson trading places. I have a feeling. I think Godwin is going to go sign with the Bears and play with Darnell Mooney and tear it up with him, whereas Allen Robinson is going to look at the gaps left in Tampa Bay, because I don't see Tom Brady retiring this year, and they've now lost Antonio Brown, and Allen Robinson is going to look at that and go, well, you know what? I'm not a big jerk. I'm going to go out there and play, and I want a championship, and Tom Brady's my best chance to get it right now. And so I think we just see the Bears. And then your last one, Chandler Jones. I could see him also going to a current playoff contender, somebody that needs to shore up their defense a little bit more, and play for a defensive-minded coach. The Tennessee Titans. That defense is already dominant, but Bud Dupree didn't really pan out with the injury that he got this year the way that they were hoping when they poached him from Pittsburgh last year. And so I think they bring in Chandler Jones and try to ship Bud Dupree out and just replace him in that spot.
So real quick, guys, he grew up a Cowboys fan.
Chandler Jones?
I don't think they can afford him. They can afford him, but he grew up a Cowboys fan.
No. So yeah, kind of interesting picks there. So for me, you had your number one being Devontae Adams.
Yes.
We all forget that Devontae Adams and Derek Carr went to the same college at the same time, tore it up in the last year's offseason. Derek Carr was making a very strong push for Devontae Adams to come over to Vegas. Devontae Adams wanted that to happen because he wasn't sure about the relationship of what's happening with Aaron Rodgers. I think if Devontae Adams doesn't get franchise tagged, he's going to the Raiders. He wants to go with his buddy. Like they have a lot of good connections with each other. Obviously, Devontae Adams, Aaron Rodgers, great connection. But I think for Devontae Adams, he's gonna look at that situation and go, you know what? I don't necessarily want to be with Aaron Rodgers my entire career because people are gonna say the only reason I'm good is because I had Aaron Rodgers throwing me the ball my entire career, and he's one of the best to ever do it. There could be that little asterisk, and I think he does want to go over to the Raiders. Obviously, they need a wide receiver help, and I think he's gonna get a better deal from the Raiders as opposed to a team like the Broncos. When it comes to Armstead, I think you need to look at a team that needs some offensive line help and to protect their quarterback. And I go, there's a team out there right now in the Cincinnati Bengals. They need to protect Joe Burrow. They didn't go after the offensive lineman last year in the draft, but it's one of those moves where you go, you know what? We're going to take Armstead. We're going to get him there for a couple of years. We're going to draft someone either this year, next year to kind of get him to develop behind him. And that's just going to instantly help out our offensive line and improve our team. And then you had Chris Godwin. I think he is going to come to Chicago. I look at it and goes, he's going to look at Justin Fields and whoever they have as the coach there and go, you know what? Like, yeah, this is a team that I think I could have fun with because Justin Fields is such a dynamic quarterback, and I think Chicago would be willing to pay him. I don't know if it's going to be like a 4 or 5 year deal. I think he's probably going to end up signing a 3 year type of deal with Chicago for maybe like 15, 16, 17 million a year. But I think he would like to come to Chicago. Obviously, I don't know if he's going to come to Chicago. I'd like to see it. Obviously, a little bit of Bears biasy there, but yeah. And then Allen Robinson, I think he goes to whatever team has the best quarterback situation. So I could see him going to the Buccaneers. The one issue there is I still think he wants to get paid, but he also wants to win, and I just don't think the Buccaneers would be able to afford him. He also wants a longer term deal. He's kind of looking at like if I can sign a 4 year deal, I would be really happy with that.
He told the Bears 5 years, $14 million a year.
Yeah, and I just don't think the Bucks can afford that because if the Bucks could afford that, they would probably offer that deal to Godwin. And who was your number 4 or
Chandler Jones.
Chandler Jones? I honestly think he stays in Arizona. I think the Cardinals look at him and go, you know what? We're not going to give you necessarily a super long term deal, maybe like a 2 year deal to keep you on our team to help bring in the next generation of our defense. But if he does end up leaving,
he for sure is going to leave.
Oh, is he?
Because at the start of the year for the first 4 weeks, it was a big topic for the Cardinals because he was considering holding out.
Okay, so if he leaves,
he's really upset with his contract situation.
Yeah. Okay. Well, in the light of that, I think it's probably he's going to go to a defense that is just needs to take that next level. So I could see it being the Titans. I could see it being the Bengals. I could honestly see it being the Broncos because they need some edge rusher help. And depending if Aaron Rodgers ends up going to the Broncos, it'd be like, well, okay, maybe I go with Aaron Rodgers because I can be really good on the defensive side of the ball for this Broncos team that has a decent defense. And Aaron Rodgers, obviously, on the offensive side of the ball, that's really, really good. So,
I didn't realize he was so upset with the Arizona management. That makes me think that maybe he tries to stay within the division and go to somebody like the LA Rams to replace Von Miller after Von Miller retires this year, which I think he probably will because he's kind of fallen off a little bit.
Yeah, he has not been the same player.
No, absolutely not.
But even if he stays, I mean, having Von Miller and then Chandler on the other side, that's a scary prospect in itself.
Yes, yes, it is.
Those are all excellent answers, guys.
Yeah. You and obviously since you are a Washington fan, Brandon Sheriff, do you think he stays or where are you hoping that he doesn't go? Like, what's your hopes for Brandon Sheriff, Josh?
Um, it's a tough situation to be in, particularly for Washington, because you just watched Trent Williams leave, and then this offseason we offered him a 6-year, $18 million deal, which is the highest for any right guard ever. So we offered him the richest deal in the country, and he left off. So no way we get a deal done. We could double franchise tag him, which would cost us $24 million a year, which I don't think is very viable. Washington's in a serious bind right now because I think Ron Rivera made a critical mistake last draft by not drafting an offensive lineman and dealing with this. Because now we're in a tough spot where we need to draft any offensive position and grab a quarterback at the same time. And I don't know how they're going to deal with that. I really don't. So looking at it now, I think we've showed our hand a little bit by signing that left tackle, and I think we're going to go for a quarterback in the draft. But looking at Brandon Sheriff's situation, I don't see a situation where he stays or takes a deal like that. But as a Washington fan, I would gladly pay him $18 million a year for 6 years. But I think where I'd like to see him go most is I really think he belongs on the Steelers. I think it's a natural fit. I really do.
That would be
I
an awesome
agree.
fit for him.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah,
going
look,
on,
I've been looking at that myself and thinking, the Steelers need to adjust their outlook. Still go for Kenny Pickett if they can get him in the draft, but don't go after the big name quarterbacks. Stick with Mason Rudolph. Maybe try to bring in somebody like Jacoby Brissett or Marcus Mariota
Jimmy
and
Garoppolo.
Jimmy G, exactly. Somebody who can just manage the game, almost like a Ryan Tannehill, and then shore up that offensive line with somebody like Brandon Sheriff, who can really open up those holes for a running back. And that's just that Naji Harris would have a monster year if he had Brandon Sheriff to run behind next year.
I agree. Yeah. That would just instantly make your offensive line back to that kind of offensive line of the Steelers we saw maybe even like 2 or 3 years ago, where it's just utterly dominant. So kind of going into the later half of the show here, this is kind of the part where we just kind of sit back and talk about our individual teams. Obviously, myself being a Bears fan, Sterling being a Steelers fan, and now Josh joining us. He is a Washington fan. So would one of you guys like to just kind of go on like a small little rant about your team, kind of what you want to see moving on from this point? Yeah.
I'll go first here. I just got to mention I don't have a ton of time here. I got to join a Zoom conference for my upcoming group here for school. So I will say this really quick though. What I'd like to see from Washington is just a little bit of stability. Any kind of stability, whatever that looks like. There's rumors now that apparently, the NFL might make Dan Snyder sell, which could bring in a new coaching change, which would absolutely fundamentally deteriorate the culture. So, in terms of like this canoe just kind of spinning around, I don't really know anymore what our strengths are. Obviously, we have a good defense, but we need so many offensive pieces that I don't know a draft can fix it, and we don't have the world's most amount of salary cap. So we're gonna need one of those lucky strikes, sort of what the Eagles got in Jalen Hurts, and those are hard to find. That's a lot to ask for from a management perspective.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I think you're right. Like your Washington football team, they need to restructure top down.
Yeah,
like
for sure they
get a
do.
new team name, new jerseys. They've got a new stadium coming. They need new ownership as well because they need to infuse new life into that franchise. Find and just start from scratch. Get a new owner in there, find a new GM. Ron Rivera is a good coach, so I would stick with him because he's seasoned. He's really good at coaching up these young guys, and start moving out some of those pieces that you can
I
get some
think
great value for.
I think Ron Rivera is the only strong part of that organization right now.
I agree.
Yeah, it's hard. Like Ron, he's undervalued as a coach for sure, but he's one of those coaches. I think if you were a coach needy team, you'd be like, yeah, I'd happily have Ron.
And I just want to comment quickly on Pittsburgh, what I would do with them, and frankly, what I would do with the Bears. So
Go for it.
if I was the Steelers, I would be signing for sure. I'd be making a big time push for Brandon Sheriff, and of course, I would perhaps go for Jimmy G or Marcus Mariota, and I would trade maybe a second round pick for one of them. But I would really build to what Pittsburgh's strengths are. Like, I mean, maybe they go get Chandler Jones, or they potentially draft another offensive lineman. Like, any of these moves to shore up that offensive line, I believe, would benefit increasingly. I think Big Ben would have actually had a much better year had he had a little bit more time. He just too many times, and I know he's aging and he doesn't have the arm he used to, but too many times, even for any quarterback, he was just under pressure far too much. I think in particular for the Bears, Doug Peterson's that guy for you guys. He never was a fan of Carson Wentz, and he picked Jalen Hurts, and I think he would do well developing Justin Fields as someone who's won a Super Bowl, who's turned Nick Foles into a confident thrower. I think he'd be able to do well with Justin Fields, and maybe sit him down, let him read the field a little bit, and build that team towards his strengths. The Bears are in kind of an interesting situation because they don't have that first round pick. Not to say you don't need it, but I think more than anything, you guys need a strong GM presence that's going to trade some of the veterans for some capital for the future, because this team needs a quick turnaround.
They do.
That's just my stance on both of the situations. I'd go for 2 offensive linemen for the Steelers, and I'd hire Doug Peterson for the Bears.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't really disagree with you. I don't know if you need to head off right this second, or you still got time.
No. I still got about a half hour.
Okay, cool.
I was just letting you guys know.
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna go much longer than a half an hour here. We're getting pretty close to the end. But yeah, Sterling, what's your thought? What's your little rant for the Steelers? What do you got for us there?
Oh, well, I think our biggest thing, if Ben Roethlisberger truly is retiring this year, then they need to find what their new identity is going to be. Because Ben Roethlisberger has been the heart and soul of that team for 18 years. It now stands alone as the only quarterback to stay and play with one team for 18 seasons, and he did not have a single losing season. He had a winning season every year. Worst record he ever had was 8-8. So they got to figure out what that is. And I really think they need to go back to that 70s Steelers smash mouth power offense. And Brandon Sheriff would be the perfect guy to get that going. The offensive line has made a lot of big strides this year. And so I kind of worry about drafting another offensive lineman and then going right back to where we were at the beginning of this year, having a rookie on the offensive line again. These guys have started looking much better as the years progressed. Matt Canada runs a very complicated offense. And so for these young guys, there was a lot for them to learn. And so I think that's why there were so many struggles early on in the season. So adding a veteran presence is important, but I don't think we need to add 2 of them. I think adding Brandon Sheriff or another right side offensive lineman to really open up those holes is key. And then if they're going to let Juju Smith-Schuster walk and possibly go to the Chargers, they are going to have to do something in the receiving core, because we're going to be left with Chase Claypool and maybe James Washington, but I think he's going to leave. So Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, they're going to need a third option. So I think they actually will look at drafting a wide receiver this year. They do most years, wide receiver, linebacker. It's a very common thing for Pittsburgh. We roll those positions over a lot. And so I think that's what we see them take in the 3rd and 4th rounds is a linebacker and then a wide receiver. I still think they're going to go after Kenny Pickett if he drops far enough in the draft, or if they think that they can trade up to that spot without selling the future to do so.
Yeah.
And part of that may fall into if they're able to sign Brandon Sheriff, that opens up a spot on the offensive line. Maybe we trade one of those guys away to move up in the draft a little bit, because some of those other teams are also struggling on their O-lines in the top 10 picks. Beyond that, we are going to have to address our secondary as well. We got Minkah Fitzpatrick locked up, but we got to sign Terrell Edmonds this year if we want to keep him, and he's going to be wanting a lot of money as well. He saw how much TJ got, he saw how much Minkah Fitzpatrick was given, and he's going to want to get paid as well. I think Joe Hayden probably moves on from Pittsburgh as well, unless he really, really just loves the environment. But Pittsburgh's not going to pay him money, and so if he wants a big contract, he's going to have to go elsewhere. I'd love for him to stay because then we don't have to find a new cornerback to replace him. But we'll have to see what happens there. You know, the secondary I think is going to be a little bit suspect next year, and then we got to do something on the D line as well. Cam Hayward is not getting any younger. Stephen Tuitt and Tyson Alualu were both out all year. You know, are they going to come back next year? Are they going to be healthy? Are they going to be in football shape? We don't know. And so I really think they need to address that in the draft as well. So there's potentially a lot of holes, and I think I might be having to look at a couple of losing seasons here coming up.
I think,
for the next 2 years.
I think just to comment real quickly, I think if that's the case, I think taking a backup quarterback from somewhere else and maybe potentially develop them. I mean, damn, even a Nick Foles, but taking the best available player at your guys' pick might be the best thing. But just having insurance at quarterback as well.
Yes. Yeah, like if they can't get Kenny Pickett in the first round, then I think they 100% go for an offensive tackle.
I agree. Or
You know,
even
like
you mentioned, an edge falls that low. Somehow it probably won't, but somehow, you know.
Right?
Well, and there's a lot
doubt
of
that
really
too,
good
but
edge rushers this year too.
That's just it. There are a lot of good edge rushers this year, so I see them going for that. I don't know if there's very many defensive tackles coming up on the free agent market, but that is another spot that they need to address.
Deron Payne.
What was that?
Deron
I said
Payne.
you guys could trade for Deron Payne probably.
Yeah, see, I don't know if they will though. You know, even free agent, like I know I mentioned it, but they got burned pretty hard by Mark Ingram this year. And so I think they stepped outside their comfort zone. They brought in a guy that they thought could help shore up the linebacker core, knowing he wasn't going to be the number one guy, and he was not happy. And that's often why Pittsburgh does not look to build their team through free agency, because we're not really a team that there's no superstar. You know, we don't let one guy run the show. You know, and a lot of guys in free agency, when they want that money, they want to come in so they can be the number one guy. And that's not going to happen in Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I can't disagree with you there. Pittsburgh has always been, we are drafting first and we are developing. Yep. They've always been draft and develop as opposed to bringing in free agents. When it comes to the draft, again, you try for Pickett. You're not trading the franchise away for it, but at the same point, if you where you guys end up, it has to be best player available. If the best player available at that moment just happens to be a wide receiver, again, I look at that and you go, you need to take the best player available, because you're not going to look at a guy like Khalil Mack and take, Leonard, and take like Kyle Fuller over, a Khalil Mack because you need a corner as opposed to an edge rusher. You're going to take Khalil Mack every single time.
Yeah, see, I think if it falls low enough and like wide receiver is the best spot on the board in the first round when the Steelers come up, I think they trade down at that point.
Which is also an option.
We got Deontay Johnson, who is a de facto number one right now. I don't think they draft a wide receiver in the first round, even if he's the best player available. They would trade down and try to get more draft capital point if that's what happens, because bringing in a first round pick wide receiver is going to upset Deontay Johnson and cause conflict in the locker room. And Pittsburgh won't do that. No. You know, they're more likely to reach on a linebacker or a defensive end, like edge rusher, in the first round than to take best player wide receiver.
For sure.
I think they'd be more tempted to go with an edge, considering they just drafted Devin Bush not too long ago. So I think they want to give Devin Bush maybe one more year to get comfortable with himself and his knee.
Oh, they will, but I know the philosophy in Pittsburgh, and they will draft a linebacker this year. Maybe not in the first round.
Not that's what I meant. Not first round.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. And yeah, when I look at the Bears, I don't know if you're done with your rant though, but yeah, when I look at the Chicago Bears, they need to tear it all down and start from new. I look at Matt Nagy, can't coach. Phenomenal guy. The players love him. They love playing for him. They will fight, tooth and nail to it. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really matter if you can't coach the team properly. Um, and he just hasn't been able to do that. And you can see it where you're just like looking at it going like, why was this called? Like, why did this happen? What's happening? I think Ryan Pace, as much as I've always defended Ryan Pace, he has missed some key picks in the first round. For instance, his first ever draft pick was Kevin White, wide receiver. At this point,
Oh,
who still
yeah.
remembers? Like Kevin White coming out of the draft that year, I was crying. I was so happy we got him, but he just fell to injuries, and then he just couldn't recover his career after that point. But then it was you look at the whole Trubisky over Mahomes debate and trading up to do so, and you just look at some of the moves he's made, and you're like, yeah, he's found some good pieces later in the rounds. For instance, finding a guy like David Montgomery in the third round, finding a guy like Darnell Mooney in the fifth, and just getting some of these guys in those later rounds is great. But at the same point, when you've had 7 years of being the general manager of a football team and you've only had 5 first round picks, and only one of them is you can actively say is a superstar, and that being Roquan Smith. We don't know what Fields is going to be yet. We don't know. That was his last first round pick, but all the other first round picks that Ryan Pace has made have either been busts or didn't live up to their potential. And obviously going back to that 2017 draft, you trade up, a spot and give up a bunch of draft capital to go get Mitchell Trubisky when you could have, it didn't matter if someone took him. You could have had Patrick Mahomes. Again, I always say looking back and doing like a redraft is impossible because no one knew what Patrick Mahomes was going to be. But, it does have that question mark of like, what are you doing? And then a bunch of other
Really,
moves.
really, it comes down to, though, to your point, is I'm looking at the draft board right now. They drafted Mr. Trubisky number 2 overall. Had they taken any other quarterback in the first round?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. They could have had Deshaun Watson. Obviously, he has all those legal issues, but again, who would have known he would have had legal issues back in that day? But it really was. And you know what? It also boils down to, yeah, they took Trubisky over Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes, but they didn't develop him. They looked at a guy who was a very raw prospect and said, you know what? We're good with that. You'll figure it out. And they didn't develop him. And yeah, again, I do like the option of Doug Peterson. I'm kind of looking at 3 guys at the moment for head coach. Going, I would be really happy with that. But yeah, Doug Peterson, I think, is probably the number one option because, again, he didn't want, Carson Wentz. He was just kind of gifted him and was like, here you go, deal with him. He drafted Jalen Hurts, and the team fired him essentially because of it. He had no control over who could come into the organization. It was, we are just going to give you players and you were going to deal with it. And yeah, so I think Doug Peterson would be good. I don't know who would be the best general manager option at the moment, but it's one of those things where, again, the Bears just need to tear down. They need to find a way to get some more draft capital. Obviously, we don't have that first round pick. I think the number one need for the team is a corner because Jalen Johnson is phenomenal, but he can't do it himself. But yeah, that's kind of my little rant.
That's fair. I don't think they need to tear down completely. Like the roster itself isn't bad in Chicago. Like they
No,
look pretty good. That's the tough thing is it's going to be hard for you guys to get any draft capital because you're going to have to sell key pieces to get that.
yeah, and when I
But yeah,
say like tear it all down, I mean from the management side and coaching side.
yeah, exactly. Front office and sideline. Like you need to change up the GM, get somebody in there that's a little bit better at managing those early picks. And yeah, you need a better head coach.
Yeah.
Somebody that's going to be able to develop players and not be just so single-minded like Matt Nagy is, and kind of like Sean McVay is. You need somebody that's a little more dynamic in there.
I agree with you. Going into the last little segment of the week, this is something we do at the end of every single week. We all choose our top 3. So Sterling, I'll get you to start out with who are your top 3 teams in the NFL currently.
All right, I'm going to give you my top 3 and then my pick for Super Bowl champion as well.
All right.
My top 3 right now is Green Bay Packers at number 1, Tampa Bay Buccaneers at number 2, and the Tennessee Titans at number 3. And I think the Tennessee Titans are coming in as a bit of a dark horse because they're getting Derrick Henry back right now. Nobody's really prepared for that, I don't think. They see it on paper and they're ready for it there, but I think everybody has forgotten how dominant and physical he is on the field. And he's going to come out and be fresh physically. His ankle might be a little weak still, but he's going to have a lot of gas in the tank. And I think he is just going to run through the AFC when the playoffs begin. And the Tennessee Titans, I think, are going to win themselves a Super Bowl championship this year.
Yeah. How about you, Josh?
I think for me, it's Green Bay. Sorry, Green Bay, the Tennessee Titans, and the Cincinnati Bengals would be my 3 right now.
Yeah, for me, I'm going to have to agree with Josh. I'm going to have to go Green Bay, Tennessee, and Cincinnati.
Cincinnati's dangerous.
They are dangerous. And again, with the point, the only reason I'm choosing the Bucks or the Titans over the Bucks is because they are getting Derrick Henry back. And again, looking at that on paper is scary, but I don't think, to what you're saying, Sterling, is they are not prepared for what he's going to be able to do. He's just going to, I could easily see him come in and rush for 250 yards in that first playoff game.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm taking the Bucks over the Bengals in my top 3 there simply because of Tom Brady.
Yep.
And the experience he has in the playoffs compared to the entire Cincinnati team. Yes, the Bengals are explosive, but they are also letdowns. They had several games this year where they just fell apart completely. Whereas the Bucks, I really think they only have one game like that, where they completely fell apart against the Saints, I believe it was, where they got shut out.
Yeah.
Even the Jets last week, everybody was looking at it, going, "Oh, maybe not." And then Antonio Brown threw his fit, and that just lit a fire under Tom Brady. And he went, "You know what? I don't need this big personality in here to win games. I win games.
Yep.
I've been winning games for over a decade. This is the second decade I've dominated this league, and I'm going to show everybody I still can."
Yeah,
and that's where I think the Bucks take that spot over the Bengals, just because of that veteran experience that Tom Brady has.
Yeah, and for me, I was looking at that last pick as it's kind of like a 3A, 3B situation. I could very easily interchange Tampa Bay into that spot because, again, simply Tom Brady. But I am kind of worried a little bit about Tampa Bay with all the injuries that they kind of have right now, because they are getting hit with the injury bug right now. And again, Tom Brady is Tom Brady, and he's going to be phenomenal. But at the end of the year, whoever goes to the Super Bowl and whoever wins the Super Bowl, we always say is typically the healthiest team.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's going to be Tennessee and Arizona playing for the Super Bowl this year.
That would be a phenomenal matchup, I think. Yeah, Josh, how about you? Who do you think's going for the Super Bowl matchup?
If I was betting, I would answer differently, but in my gut feeling, I'm a gambler at heart, so I'm going to say the Chargers and the 49ers.
Chargers and 49ers, okay.
Oh, yeah, 2 wild card teams.
Very wild card. Yeah, I know. I have a lot of faith in the wild card this year. San Francisco struggled with injury, and I think the Chargers are still, trying to find who they are as a rhythm runners. And Eckler's been hurt a little bit, but I think when the chips are down, I'm comfortable betting on Justin Herbert and Kyle Shanahan.
Yeah, but for me,
you know what? I very well could be wrong.
For sure. For me at the moment, I would say I'm having Cincinnati go from the AFC. I think you just look at Joe Burrow and how calm, cool, and collective he is in especially those pressure situation games, and how good that team has played over these last couple weeks. I think you see them, and then I think you see Arizona.
That's a good one too.
Yeah, I think that would be a very fun matchup to watch.
We all agree Green Bay is going to tank.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah,
I think so.
And so are the Cowboys. Let's be real.
They'll win their first game. They'll win their first game, Green Bay. But I don't see them winning their second one.
No, I
It
agree with
depends who
you.
they're playing, really, because they're going to have that first week bye probably. And so it really depends who wins that wild card weekend, whether they can even get out of that divisional round.
I agree.
They match up. They match up very rough against San Francisco.
They do.
Very
They
rough.
do.
Yeah.
And especially if San Francisco gets gets motoring and Trey Lance can actually pick up the pace a little bit. I do think for that game though, if I have to choose for a playoff matchup, I honestly would rather go with Jimmy Garoppolo just because he has the experience as opposed to Trey Lance versus Green Bay.
Yeah, once the playoffs start, I think the 49ers have to go back to Jimmy G and focus more on managing the game and the clock than they do going with Trey Lance and taking a risk.
Yeah.
It depends. It depends though, because if Trey Lance comes in and beats the brakes off the Rams, which is a big ask, but if it does happen, they'd have a serious decision.
That's true.
That's true. Yeah, because they could look at that and go, well, you know what? Maybe defenses aren't quite ready for Trey Lance and what he's capable of.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Well, I think this has been a really good show today, guys. I'd like to thank Sterling and Josh for both, joining, and thank you for everyone who stopped by and left some comments. I think this worked out really well, and we're gonna get back to the regular routine after the holiday system every Saturday. Typically, we do try to start around noon Mountain Time, but again, we started a little bit later today. But we'll be posting when we're starting a little bit more consistently. But yeah, thanks again for everyone for coming out. We have our Discord here in Twitch, so if you want to join us on our Discord, please join the link and we can chat with you there. But yeah, any words from you guys?
Thank you guys for having me today. Thank you guys for having me.
No
today.
problem.
I had a lot of fun talking with you.
Yeah,
thanks for making it, Josh. We hope you can make it more in the future. You bring up so many good topics. You're a blast to talk with about this stuff. Great perspectives. So I hope you can make it more.
Absolutely. All right.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, everybody who stopped by in the chat. I hope you all enjoyed. I hope you join us again next week.
But yeah, thanks again. Peace.
Peace out. Have a great weekend. Enjoy football.